My guest is Jordan Richards from the Screening Room in downtown Kingston. I'm so glad you came in. I just love the Screening Room.
Well, it's great to be here. Yeah, it's great to be here.
And the Screening Room is an absolute gem. And tell us a little bit about the Screening Room for someone who hasn't been there.
Sure.
It's a wonderful
So the
facility.
Screening Room, it's a independent theater in downtown Kingston. We've got we have 3 screens. We do roughly 9 screenings a day, tends to be different movies. We specialize in both new release art house movies, so stuff that really kills in festivals, things from across the world that maybe a multiplex would pass on. And then we're also known as what's known as a second run theater, so that with the best of Hollywood kind of movies, we do end up showing those as well, but just a little bit after it would have its sort of initial wide release.
And that works for me because when I see a good movie coming up, I think, oh, I want to go and see that one. Before I know it, it's gone.
Yes.
But there it is at the Screening Room.
Yeah, and you know, what's really nice too is we have a lot of people who will wait to see, you know, a massive movie will come out, something like Killers of the Flower Moon, which has just been released. We're going to show it. But at this point, just due to sort of, you know, how distribution works, we'll get it afterwards. And we have people come up to us and say, I know it's out, but I'd really like to see it here. You guys are going to get it, right? And we generally do.
And that's another thing that's really nice, the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's intimate, the theaters are small. I love the fact that when you buy a cup of coffee, they give it to you in a china mug, and then you drop it off at the counter on your way out. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, we are very aware of where we sort of fit. We are not a multiplex, but we are, you know, it's sort of a warm, kind of local, grassroots kind of theater. So the idea isn't necessarily to compete with the experience that you would get at, you know, a Cineplex or a Landmark, but to create something that feels really special and sort of quaint for that environment. So, you know, so much so that if we're really busy and we're out of coffee cups, there's disappointment in people. Like, it's become this thing that people are really invested in, and you know, you can take my word for it, but a lot of people seem to believe that we also have the best popcorn in Kingston.
Well, I heard you use real butter.
We do use real butter. Like, I gotta go. We get those bricks, we melt them, all that fun stuff. But yeah, there's no butter topping at the Screening Room. But
it's really a cool, and I like for what it isn't. I know that it isn't going to be 3D.
No.
I know it's not going to be a bunch of special effects.
Nope.
It's not going to be too loud.
No.
And
we did get new sound systems though, but they're still not too loud.
It's still not too loud.
Yes.
Because I find if I go to another theater, it's just too much.
Yeah.
And also that the films are going to be, I may not know anything about them, but the staff are really knowledgeable.
Sure.
And when you say, you know, what's it about? And they can just give you a little bit of a synopsis and think, oh, is that something? And they'll say, you know, if you like this film, you'll like this film. And I really appreciate that. And because a lot of the films, like you said, they're art films, or they come from other countries, and we may not know very much about them. But I'm seldom disappointed in any of the movies that I've seen there.
Well, that's great to hear. And I will say, just jumping on that, we're all really passionate about film there. You know, a lot of the employees, a lot of the staff, our owner, Wendy Hewitt, we're all doing our best to not only be on the pulse of what sort of, you know, mainstream filmmaking is, and a lot of times it's pretty obvious, like we know Barbie's a big deal, but we follow the festivals, we follow filmmakers. A lot of us come from different backgrounds. Myself being a filmmaker, other employees, you know, PhD students in the film department at Queens. So we really do our best to curate with our new releases things that we think would be of value. And when it comes to our hope is that, you know, these movies are huge sensations. But at the end of the day, we just want to offer an opportunity that these movies get shown. Because a lot of the movies that we really put a lot of care and effort into showcasing for people are not films that are going to get wide releases. And they're films that, in a lot of cases, if you don't see them there, they don't end up on streaming services or DVD or Blu-ray.
And they're beautiful films.
Yeah.
Some of them coming from other countries are just fabulous.
Yeah.
And what's coming up that I should get excited about?
Sure. So there's a couple. I'll do the biggest international one first. We have a movie called Anatomy of a Fall, which won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival this year, and a lot of buzz around it. It's going to open November 3rd.
What's it? Just a little bit. What's it about?
So the premise is essentially, taking from the title, Anatomy of a Fall. A woman calls in calls to the police, makes a 911 call. Her husband has fallen off of their two-story sort of balcony, and it ultimately becomes this sort of crime procedural that's mostly about doubt. And it's my understanding of it is it's very clear to the audience that she didn't do it, but it's about it's sort of like a tin drum trial, where ultimately instead of just accepting the idea of an accident, it becomes this media circus and this really complicated drama about, poking holes in something that seems foundational and essentially disgracing someone.
And you sit there thinking, this could happen. This could
Yeah.
happen to me. I'm perfectly happy, law-abiding, and this could happen to me. I think that's the kind of film that you start to identify with and think, wow, yeah, this could really happen.
Yeah, those are the movies that I like, are
Yeah, for
really
sure.
complicated sort of moral quandaries that almost, out of happenstance can unravel someone. And, they're not, it is a foreign language, it will be subtitled, but I obviously haven't seen it yet, but it's one of the movies for me personally that I'm the most excited about coming forward.
And what else have we got coming up?
What else we've got? We are going to get Killers of the Flower Moon. It doesn't have a date yet, but it's going to come some point in November, maybe early December.
And I'm thinking, just a heads up on this one, go to the bathroom before it starts. It
Yes.
runs something like 3 hours. doesn't it?
I believe it is 3.5 hours long.
Yeah. So you want to be comfortable.
Right.
You don't miss any of it. But it is based on
It's
real
been-
facts.
Yeah, so it's based on a novel, which a nonfiction piece
Yeah.
that details, and I sort of was kind of embarrassed that I didn't even realize this, but it's Martin Scorsese's new movie. I don't know, he's pretty good.
Yeah, I think he's got.
he's done.
He's got some chops. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
got-
done okay.
Yeah, okay.
But essentially, it's the story of the Osage people, who were the only post-colonialism. They were the only indigenous group in America that managed to buy land. It was land that no one really thought anything of. You couldn't farm on it. It was very desolate, sort of Midwest.
It was Oklahoma.
Yeah,
Right.
it is Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
And just so happens, there's a lot of oil on it.
Yeah.
And what happened is that a giant economy boomed, but when sort of white settlers realized this, they started to marry in to these indigenous groups and ultimately quietly created, a really sort of sinister genocide. So the movie follows Leonardo DiCaprio's character and Robert De Niro's character. Also, they're okay.
Yeah, they've been around a while.
They did a
yeah,
little
yeah,
bit.
they're okay.
And sort of the kind of quiet sinisterness of invading a society and ultimately coming out on top.
Right.
That's a movie that is going to have a lot of awards buzz. The reviews have come out so far, and it seems to be pretty breathtaking. So we're really excited about that one.
And how timely when you think about it, given our history here in Canada.
Yeah.
With residential schools missing and we're Indigenous women and all the other. I mean, this is a movie that we look at through a whole different lens than we would have maybe 20, 30 years ago.
Which is something that I'm kind of interested in because ultimately, most of the coverage as of right now has been from American critics, and contextualizing it within Canada and sort of, seeing this drama play out that really is not, it's not a white savior piece. In a lot of ways, it's kind of a white devil one.
It is.
Where it's really about, the sort of the complicit nature that those people had to go through and the destruction that ultimately were caused by men masquerading as their friends.
That's right. And it played with their emotions as well as just to get their money. It's heartbreaking in that sense as well. Yeah. It's It's a story that I think we all need to see.
And
We
I
may
will
not.
say, disclaimers, my understanding of it is it's a pretty brutal movie.
Yeah.
But I can't stress enough that I do feel that it's incredibly important. And just, if you take yourself away from just the context of the film, it's also Martin Scorsese. This is, somehow he is still top of his game. He's still managing to split the atom on the crime movie. He's done it again. I don't know how. I'd call him up, but I don't have his number anymore. But yeah, no, that's a big one, sort of going forward, that we're all excited about.
There's some wonderful movies coming up, and the other thing, your website, they give a pretty decent synopsis of what a movie is, just in case you're kind of wondering. The other thing that's great, you have matinees in the middle of the week.
We do.
You know your audience.
Yeah, and we program accordingly as well.
Right,
so
and that's wonderful.
We really do go out of our way on our website to try and, let's call it a heads up, because we do play challenging films.
That's right, and it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Just know what you're getting into, and if you say, "Oh, I was really offended," well, it did tell you there's some coarse language. So, yeah.
And it's not meant to be sort of an elitist thing. It's just that, when going off of the thing of the idea of the early matinees, a lot of the times we kind of function as two different theaters. Mm-hmm. There is a different sort of clientele that comes into the matinees, and we tend to book in the hopes that those would be movies that they would enjoy.
Yes.
Films like we have a movie called Naiad right now.
Yeah, well, it's retired people. I mean, come on.
Well, I'm glad you said it.
Right,
I was like, there are people
right.
who are different and they come earlier.
They just come a little earlier, but mostly we're retired people, and the afternoon works just fine. So we got a long, cold winter coming up, and what a great way to spend an afternoon. Go to a movie at the screening room. Yeah. Will you come back and talk movies again?
Of course.
Glad to have you. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Okay.